Please welcome Paul Murray, co-founder and chairwoman of the Newtown Action Alliance and the Newtown Action Alliance Foundation, and Michelle Morgan, rector of St. Mark's Episcopal Church.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Poe Murray, and I am the chairwoman of the Newtown Action Alliance and the Newtown Action Alliance Foundation. Standing here next to me is one of our strongest allies and friend, Reverend Michelle Morgan, who has provided a home away from home for the gun violence survivors and advocates here in St. Mark's. Reverend Michelle and I would like to welcome you to the 10th Annual National Vigil for all victims of gun violence. Tonight, we are honored to be joined by courageous gun violence survivors from more than 22 states, committed elected leaders and their staff, dedicated local, state, and national GVP groups, and fearless advocates and volunteers who have made a commitment to work together to end this gun violence crisis in our nation. Tonight's vigil service anchors the nationwide vigils to end gun violence in communities across America during the month of December. We thank all our partners for hosting the local vigils to support the survivors from your community in your states to remember their loved ones who were taken too soon and wounded by guns. July 22nd, 2022 was the 10-year mark of the Aurora movie theater shooting. And 1 week from tonight, December 14, 2022, is the 10-year mark of the Sandy Hook tragedy. Since 12 moviegoers were killed and 58 others were injured in Aurora, and 26 children and educators were killed by gunmen with weapons of war, more than 1 million Americans have been shot, and more than 400,000 Americans have been killed by guns in every corner of our nation. Tragically, guns are now the #1 killer of American children. Gun violence is a public health emergency, and we need all hands on deck to end this disease. Therefore, we are joined together here on Capitol Hill once again to honor with action, to shine a light on the devastating epidemic of gun violence in our nation, and to renew our commitment to continue to fight for transformational change that is needed to save lives. That change has begun. President Joe Biden has passed executive actions, and Steve Dettelbach has been confirmed as a permanent director of the ATF. "15 Senate Republicans and 14 House Republicans went against the gun lobby and passed the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act. That was the first set of life-saving gun bills passed and signed into law in 28 years. Other crucial bills, like the assault weapons ban and Ethan's Law, to keep kids safe from unsecured guns, were passed in the House of Representatives with the leadership of Speaker Pelosi. We are now waiting for the Senate to act. More change is imminent because of you, all of you. And we already have public opinion on our side. It will become untenable for any elected leader to stand on the wrong side of history because our children who have been forced to live in unsafe communities and traumatized by active shooter drills and lockdowns will vote and begin to vote. They will no longer tolerate inaction, and our movement would sadly continue to grow as more and more Americans are impacted by gun violence. On behalf of the Newtown Action Alliance, St. Mark's, and over 100 partners, we thank each one of you here in this church and those of you watching this vigil service at home for being in our fight to end this gun violence crisis. Now, it is my privilege to introduce Senator Chris Murphy, who has been a champion of change for Connecticut and beyond, and Jackie Haggerty, who was a survivor from Sandy Hook school shooting 10 years ago.
Good evening, everyone. I am so pleased to be here tonight to join my friend, my hero, Jackie Haggerty from Newtown, Connecticut, to introduce to you tonight our honored guest. We are so pleased to be here in the presence of so many friends, advocates, Madam Speaker, members of Congress, public servants. There's probably not another public figure in the world than Joe Biden. He's a public figure beyond all others. But when I think of my president, the image that lives in the front of my brain isn't a speech he gave or an election he won or a bill he passed. What I remember are two conference rooms nearly 10 years ago in Danbury, Connecticut. Senator Blumenthal and I had invited then Vice President Biden to come to Connecticut in the aftermath of Sandy Hook to talk to our state, our grieving, our hurting state, about the path forward. After the speech, President Biden asked for time with the Sandy Hook families, and it won't surprise you that he told his plane to wait for hours as he sat in a conference room at Western Connecticut State University until he had held every hand, hugged every grieving parent, and wiped away every tear. He was 2 hours late for his plane when he walked out of that room. But at that time, of course, the cameras had all left, the reporters were gone, and standing outside that conference room wasn't Joe Biden, the vice president, it was Joe Biden, the person. And what happened next is something I'll never forget. He was already 2 hours late for his plane, but he didn't leave because somebody told him that in another conference room across the hall were a different set of families that no one in America had really heard about, moms and dads who had lost their sons and daughters to gun homicides in Bridgeport and New Haven and Hartford. Joe Biden knew that their pain wasn't any less debilitating than the pain of the Sandy Hook families. And so he told his people that he wasn't going anywhere. He walked into that second room and he held every hand, he hugged every crying parent, he wiped away every tear. And then for hours, I was there, I watched this happen. He sat in a chair and listened to every single parent tell one of the most powerful people in the world the story of their child, who he was and who he would have been if not for our nation's gun laws. When Joe Biden's term as vice president was over, he could have looked back on a career well done, a public life that made an enormous difference. He deserved a rest. And I guess I don't know all of the reasons why he decided to offer himself up for service again, this time as president. He probably knew that he was the only person who could lead the Communities Act, the first gun safety bill in 30 years, would not have passed without Joe Biden's leadership. It just wouldn't have. And what I find so amazing about our president is that he didn't wait a week after he signed that bill before he started demanding that Congress do more, universal background checks and a ban on assault weapons. And so, on behalf of Senator Blumenthal and Congresswoman Hayes and the urging of the Vigil's organizers, we invited President Biden to join us here tonight. To many, it might have seemed like a long shot, but a lot of us knew that it wasn't, because we've seen President Biden when the cameras are on, like when he moved the country almost single-handedly to action after Buffalo and Uvalde. But also, we've seen him when the cameras are off. That's why we're so excited to have him here today. But the introduction of President Biden is not mine, but it will be Jackie Haggerty. Jackie Haggerty is a hero of mine, as I mentioned. She was a second grader at Sandy Hook Elementary School in December 2012. Her classroom was just across the hall from those classrooms we know so much about today. Today, she is a courageous survivor, and she is a courageous advocate for tougher, common-sense gun laws. Jackie Haggerty.
My name is Jackie Haggerty. I am 17 years old, and I co-lead the Junior Newtown Action Alliance at Newtown High School. A week from today will mark the 10 years since I survived the Sandy Hook school shooting. At the time, I was only 7 years old. I heard and saw things no child, no person should ever have to see. It was impossible to imagine that 26 innocent lives were killed in the same building I was in. There were moments in that classroom where I sat, worrying that I would die, worrying that that door would burst open and I would never go home to see my mommy, daddy, and my siblings. But that door wasn't opened until first responders had come to save us. That day I survived because the shooter armed with an AR-15 chose the left instead of right in that hallway. The last 10 years have not been easy, but living my life honoring the victims has helped. Being kind, like Principal Dawn Hawksprung, and choosing love like Jesse Lewis and so many others. Tonight, family, friends, and survivors gather from across the country to remember the people that were taken too soon by gun violence and make a commitment to honor the lives of those we love by taking action. For the last decade, our childhood has been stolen by gun violence. Guns are now the #1 killer of children in America, and we are asked to be brave while hiding under our desks, in our classrooms, while too many elected officials lack the courage to pass common sense laws to save our lives. Thankfully, we have a president who does more than send thoughts and prayers. He has already passed more executive actions on gun safety than any other president, and he has relentlessly pushed for a ban on weapons of war. He understands that we are living in fear and we have suffered enough. It is my privilege to introduce President Joe Biden, our gun safety champion.
Thank you. I'm sure if the lights are on all of you instead of me, there's a lot of people in this church that I know and have not only consoled one another, but have taken time to console me in the loss of my family. Jackie, thank you for the introduction. More importantly, thank you for your courage. Folks, events like this are hard. They're hard for all of you because it brings back the very moment that everything happened, no matter how many years pass, no matter how many years go by. And it brings it back, but your voices matter. Your voices matter a great deal. Rector Morgan, thank you for welcoming us to St. Mark's to remember, to heal, and to fulfill a purpose. 10 years ago, this nation's vigil was created here in Washington to pray for the souls of Sandy Hook and their families. Ever since that time, this church has been opened its doors to more victims and more families of a violence that rips at the very soul of this nation. To all of you here tonight, it's under different circumstances, but I know a little bit what the loss feels like. It'll be an anniversary on the 18th of this month. I lost my wife and daughter and nearly lost my 2 sons when a tractor trailer broadsided them. And it's not long after that, an anniversary of losing my son. I know that feeling. Everyone's different, but I know that feeling. You know, it's like a black hole in the middle of your chest you're being dragged into, and you never know if there's ever a way out. And what I admire so much about all of you is you show up and remember, because remembering brings it back the very moment that it happened. But all of you at the time, and I spent several days up in Sandy Hook and then went back. At the time, it was astounding to see, even then, the courage that was represented. Jill and I met with you, prayed with you, and have worked with you. We've seen you turn pain into purpose. Together, we've made some important progress. The most significant gun law passed in 30 years, but still not enough. Still not enough. Even as our work continues to limit the number of bullets can be in a cartridge, the type of weapons that can be purchased and sold, the attempt to ban assault weapons, a whole range of things that are just common sense, just simple common sense. But you know, we did it before. You may remember. In the 90s, we did it with the help of the very people in here, led by Speaker Pelosi in the House and many others. And we did it, and guess what? It worked. The number of violent and mass murders reduced were significant. A lot of people's lives were saved. You know, and we can do it again. Scripture says the light shines in darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. To all of you here tonight, you are the light. You are literally the light. And your loved ones, your friends, they're the light. And they'll always be with you, no matter what happens. They're always with you. How many of you ask yourself, what would my son or daughter want me to do at this moment? They're in your heart. They're part of you. They're always going to be with you. And at this National Vigil for Victims of Gun Violence, I ask the country to join me in a moment of silence to remember every one of them. And we ask God to give us the strength to finish the work left undone on behalf of the lives we've lost and all the lives we can save. May God bless you all and keep you safe. Here's my back.
I'm Richard Blumenthal, the U.S. Senator from Connecticut, a colleague of Chris Murphy and a partner of his in this fight. And you may think that the President of the United States can't be topped. But I'm about to introduce you to someone who can. But before I do, I really want to offer my own thanks. I've been here every year, and I know many of you have as well. And I look into your faces, and I see you from all around the country, and for the very first time, we have some folks from Uvalde, Texas. Thank you for coming in the midst of your pain. We lived through Sandy Hook. We went to the firehouse within hours after that savage, brutal murder of 20 beautiful children and 6 great educators. And we have visited with and come to know not only those families, but others who have come to Congress through their pain and grief and the raw feelings of regret, but never doubt that you ones who will get it done. And we are so fortunate to have a President of the United States who for the first time came here on this evening. The first time a president has come here. The first president to actively work as he has done for a ban on ghost guns and on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and safe storage, Ethan's Law, and so much of what we've done in Connecticut. The strongest gun laws in Connecticut in the nation, but we know that guns have no respect for state boundaries, and that's why we need federal protection. That's why we need national laws. Now, you may not be a religious person, but we're in a place of worship. And this moment, for me, year after year, has always been sacred because it brings us together to remember and to pledge that we will never forget all of those victims, all of the survivors, all of the loved ones who give us the strength to continue this fight. And most important, the young people who are here today. I thank Paul Murray, Newtown Action Alliance, all of you who have helped to organize, but most important, the young people like Jackie Haggerty, who are here, and their presence sends a message that we will never back down, we will never go away, we will never stop fighting for gun violence prevention. And the most courageous and strong advocate of gun violence prevention is standing right next to me. Her life has been about saving lives, but most importantly, protecting the children. Her life and her career have been about making life better for the kids of America, and there is no person who has done more to protect our children. I am so proud to introduce to you Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Once again, it is an honor, a privilege to be with each and every one of you in this ever sadly widening circle of friends who've come here to tell their stories. It's an honor for me to be introduced by Senator Blumenthal because of his own gigantic credentials in terms of fighting gun violence, even before Sandy Hook. To hear Senator Murphy talk about our president and his commitment to stopping gun violence, but also to praying with the families affected by it. And to be with Jackie. Jackie, you did a great job introducing the President of the United States. Jackie Haggerty, 17 years old. What poise, what grace, what strength you demonstrated. Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, for your generous remarks, which I accept on behalf of all of the House Democrats who had the courage to take the votes. Listen. And one of our newest members of Congress who brings his own personal experience to this fight, Maxwell Frost is here with us. I believe Max is here. Max? The constant reinvigoration of this fight in the Congress of the United States, we couldn't be better served when someone who's had his experience brings his youth and his determination to this. Thank you, Max. Thank you again. When I came in, I was looking for Fred up here, because usually where I see him. And I said, where's Fred? And then when I walked down there, I saw Fred. And he said, let me tell you why I'm down here and not up there. Because there's so many more new survivors, sad to say, who have joined us here to convey their stories to us individually or as a group, but also for us to commit to them that not only, as the senator said, we will never forget, but what he also said is we will not stop until the job is done, stopping gun violence. When we tell them we are sorry for our loss, we must act upon that. Now I see a shirt that says, just do it. Just do it. And that's good guidance, and I'm sorry for your loss as well. This morning I had the privilege of speaking as speaker at the funeral service. Well, actually it started this morning, but it was this afternoon by the time I spoke, of Donald McEachin, our member from Virginia. He was a champion in the Congress on fighting gun violence. And reason I bring it up for that reason, but also when I spoke, I said, I want to quote what Don McEachin said on his first day as a member of Congress, his first speech on the floor. He quoted the first sermon of Jesus. The first sermon of Jesus. And Jesus said it was time to spread the good news to help those in need. That's a call to action in Jesus' first speech. Thank you, Reverend Rector Morgan and St. Mark's, for once again having us in this beautiful holy setting. Now, just some little history. All those years ago when we passed the Brady bill, I was a junior member of Congress. My leader in the House, I was a whip, my leader in the House was a gentleman from New York called Chuck Schumer. And Chuck Schumer took the lead then as a member of the House, and now we're so blessed that he's in the position of power that he is in the Senate and still committing to get the job done. It wasn't easy then. It took a couple of times. Some of you have heard my stories about how we interacted with the Bradys and all that. But nonetheless, eventually we got it done. So when it was time for this bill now, which is a great bill, but it was not the Brady bill, I said to one of my colleagues, and I give her full credit for the passage in the House, Lucy McBath. Lucy McBath. Many of you know her story of her son Jordan, how they tried to have a baby and then they did, and it was Jordan, and then he becomes a victim of gun violence. But when the bill finally took its shape, I had been part of passing the Brady bill, and this bill was not the Brady bill, but it was progress. So I said, Lucy, is it good enough? Should we hold out for more? She said, I will speak to the caucus on the subject. And she told us, as a survivor, that it was certainly good enough and that we should pass the legislation. And that was the most persuasive argument that the members received. Again, not the Brady bill, but progress. So on these issues, when we talk about being on the right side of history, we want to be on the right side of the future. A future. Fred mentioned that there are new people here. Again, we've gone from the 10th anniversary of Newtown, and thank you to the representatives from Connecticut, Senator Murphy, Senator Blumenthal, all of the delegation, and I'm so glad that Ayanna will be joining us again here because she was part of the fight. But when we go from Newtown to Uvalde and so much in between, and I too want to acknowledge our friends from Uvalde who are here. They showed me the picture of their beautiful daughter, Jackie. She was dressed as an angel. She is an angel. Again, we all share your loss, but that's simply not good enough. We have to act upon that. So, what do we want to do? We keep saying it, and we'll continue to keep saying it. We're here to grieve, to draw strength from each other, to be inspired by each other, to renew our resolve and that. And hopefully this vigil offers a place to heal. In that regard, I want to thank Poe Murray. She has been remarkable. Where are you, Poe? And again, as Senator said, my whole mission in Congress has been for the children, for safe schools and this, and mental health for them and safety of their families and for their very survival. 20 little children murdered in Newtown. Thank you to the Newtown Action Alliance for bringing us together once again this evening. 19 fourth graders murdered at Uvalde, Jackie being one of them. 5 children killed by guns every day. Just because they're not mass murders in one episode doesn't mean that they aren't mass murders in terms of taking the lives of our children. And yes, as Jackie said so beautifully, as we say to our colleagues, your political survival is nothing compared to the survival of our children. How could you not know that? How could you not know that and have the courage to take the hard vote? So, again, what we want to do, as the President said, is ban straw purchases. Well, this is what we have done in the bill: ban straw purchases, protect domestic violence survivors, help states implement extreme risk protection order laws. You know all about that because it wouldn't have happened without you. But what we want to do, and the House has already voted to, as has been indicated, get assault weapons off our streets, require background checks, outlaw untraceable ghost guns, advance safe gun storage, and ban the sale of bump stocks and high-capacity magazines. The President mentioned many of these things, and he has been a champion. When Senator Murphy was talking about Vice President then Biden with the families, I was thinking of him in the Capitol. Many of you have been there when he has been there, and we once again come together, state our resolve, showcase the sadness of our survivors so that we can have some inspiration to change the minds of some. But then Vice President Biden came. It was actually the day before the vote in the Senate for a previous gun bill that we did not prevail on. He would go in the room with the survivors. None of the other, just alone. He's a survivor himself. Go in the room and be there for a long time and listen to their stories. And they trusted him because he had lost a child and a wife and then another child, older child. So he was in that same sad club that nobody wants to be a member of. They had credibility when sharing concern. He brings that to the White House. This is a high priority for him. That's why he was here tonight, to share his commitment with all of you, not once again, but on the ongoing. So we're very blessed to have a president in the White House who understands the pain, the trauma that goes with all of this. Some of you have told me that losing a family member makes you forever have a pre-existing medical condition because of the trauma of it all. But know your power in this, and I know many of you do. I know Fred does. And the fact is that nothing good can happen in the Congress in the strongest possible way, no matter how we maneuver, without the outside mobilization. You are the ones that make it happen. You are the ones that make it happen. It's all about time. It's about time to get it done. But it's about the time it takes to convince some. To us, it is totally inevitable that this will happen. To some, it is inconceivable. So we want to shorten the distance between the inevitable and the inconceivable and get the job done for the children, for their families. So I bring you the commitment of the House Democrats in whatever position any of us holds. They are all committed. And now with Max there to again invigorate the effort, with Lucy there with her personal experience. Another one of our colleagues lost his son in gun violence on the streets in Chicago, innocently, but nonetheless, fatally. And he said to me, there's no sound that is more painful in the world than to hear a mother find out that she has lost a child. I'm sure that applies to dads as well. And so in awe of all of you to have the courage to take the time to share your stories. But understand this, nothing good wouldn't happen unless you turn your agony into action. Your sacrifice that you are making will save other lives, and that is what we are all committed to do. So thank you for giving me the privilege of sharing some thoughts with you tonight, with the commitment that I bring from the House Democrats to be there until the job is done. and in doing so, to take our lead from all of you as you help shape whatever the next priority should be and what would be acceptable. Thank you all so much. God bless all of you. Help spread the news. Mm-hmm.